What's up, guys? This is Manoj Uptani. I welcome you all on behalf of the Edupedia world. First number seatbelts, we're about to take over the first topic of the day, and that will be the approach to auditing in a CIS environment. So, what should be your approach if I'll talk about if you are auditing in a CIS environment? That means you're doing some kind of auditing on any kind of computer information system. So, what should be your approach? What all things you need to keep in mind while you proceed towards that? So that's going to be divided into a few of the segments. The major ones are these 5. Number 1, skill and competence. Number 2, planning. Number 3, risk. Number 4, risk assessment. And number 5, documentation. So guys, we all are aware of this thing that auditing in a computerized information system environment, it emphasizes that the overall objective and the scope of the audit do not change in a CIS environment. They don't want that, okay? Whatever kind of stuff you were doing while you were auditing the manual systems, they should remain the same while you are doing the auditing under CIS environment as well. So, however, having said that, the use of a computer basically changes the processing, storage, retrieval and communication of the financial information, and that's going to affect the accounting and internal control systems which are employed by the entity. The auditor, that means you should consider one thing, that the effect of various factors like the kind of extent and the use of computers for preparing those accounting information, the efficiency of the internal control over input, processing, analysis and reporting which is undertaken in the CIS installation, then the kind of impact of that computerization on the audit trail that could otherwise be expected to exist in a manual system. You need to take care of all these things. Primarily, these are these 5 if I talk about. I'll mark the beginning and make you understand first of all what do I mean by skill and competence. So guys, you as an auditor, you should have that sufficient knowledge of computer information system so that you can plan, direct, supervise, control and finally you can review the work which has been performed. The sufficiency of the knowledge would depend on the nature and extent of the CIS environment. Let's suppose that company is having SAP. That means you need to be abreast with the kind of updated knowledge how to work on SAP. If that company is a very small scale company and that's working on a software like Tele, you don't need to have that much knowledge wherein you'll be having if in case that company has been setting up softwares like SAP or Oracle. Absolutely. So your knowledge about their sufficiency, whether the knowledge is sufficient or not, that's going to be dependent on the kind of nature and the extent of their CIS environment. You as an auditor, you should consider whether any specialized CIS skills are needed in the conduct of the audit or not. That means just now I made you understand with the example of SAP. So therein you'll require that special knowledge. If the answer is an affirmative, that means yes, you require the same. So you as an auditor would seek the assistance of an expert who is possessing such skills. You need to contact the SAP expert. They are going to provide you the skills, that training, which will help you in understanding the processes in a great manner. So this was all what I wanted to tell you with respect to skill and competence. Moving on to the second part, that is the planning. So what should I be including as far as your auditing approach is concerned in a CIS environment with respect to planning? So in regard to planning, I can say that you as an auditor, you should obtain an understanding of the significance and complexity of the CIS activities and the availability of the data for use in our audit. You should also obtain basically guys an understanding of the accounting and internal control system so that you can plan the audit and you can determine the nature, timing and extent of your audit procedures. As an auditor, your understanding of the process will include the CIS infrastructure, what all are available over there as the infrastructure, whether the kind of hardware that they are using, the operating systems that they are using, the application softwares that they are using, are they really sufficient and appropriate for your case or not? The kind of significance and the complexity of the computerized processing in each significant accounting application. You need to be aware of the same. You need to check on the significance which relates to materiality of the financial statement as well. Assertions which are going to affect by the computerized processing. Also, you need to check and take care of the determination of the organizational structure of the client. You need to have that kind thing very much clear in your mind. What is the hierarchy? what are the organizational structure, if I'll talk about, of the client, their CIS activities, the extent of their concentration or distribution on the computer processing throughout the entity. All this you need to be aware of. Next, you as an auditor, you need to check and determine the extent of availability of the data by reference to the source documents, the computer files, the other eventual matters. So all these things will be covered under your scope of planning. You need to check and abreast yourself with complete totality how you should move and proceed in order to complete your auditing in a great manner with respect to that CIS environment. Next comes in risk. If I'll talk about risk, so guys, when the computer information systems are significant, the auditor should assess whether it may influence the assessment of inherent and control risk or not. So there are a few of the things that you need to keep in your mind. The nature of the risk and those ICS in the CIS environment, that will include various things. Number one, lack of transaction trails. Let's suppose there are some of the computer information systems and these are designed so that a complete transaction trail is available, which is useful for the audit purposes. This might exist for only a short period of time or only in computer readable form. So what happens is, where a more complex application system, it performs a large number of steps, there may not be a complete trail. You may not be provided with the same. Accordingly, errors are going to be embedded in that application's program knowledge, and which is going to make it very difficult for you to detect on a timely basis by manual procedures. That's the problem in a CIS environment. There is some lack which is available with respect to a transaction trail. You just don't come across the things wherein you get to know that how transaction actually proceeded line by line. That lack of transaction trail is basically going to be affecting you up in big manner. Next will be the uniform processing of transactions. So we all are aware that we are doing some kind of audit which is based on computers. Absolutely, sir. Computer programs basically processing transactions uniformly, virtually eliminating the kind of occurrence of the clerical errors. However, if programming error exists, let's suppose, the good part about any kind of computer system, it's going to eliminate the clerical errors. However, if I'm telling you that there is a program error, by default there is a program error. So what's going to happen? If there is a program error which exists, then all the transactions will be processed incorrectly. Simple. The formula, the setup has been made and in such a manner which is incorrect, then there will be a uniform processing of those transactions and all those transactions will be incorrectly plotted. That is the number 2 risk. Number 3 is the lack of segregation of the functions. That many controls basically become concentrated in a CIS environment, allowing the data processing of incompatible functions basically. So that is bad part in this case. There are no segregation of functions. And if I talk about the CIS environment, if in case there will be no segregation of functions, definitely it's going to impose and pose a big defect in the complete system of auditing. Next will be the potential of errors and irregularities. So the potential of human error is in the development, maintenance and execution of the CIS. It may be greater than in the manual systems because of the level of detail which is inherent in all these activities. Also, I can say that the potential of individuals to gain the unauthorized access to the data and to alter that data without visible evidence, that may be very much greater in CIS environment. You are just not aware of the kind of irregularities and the errors which are going on in the company. So how would you proceed? Absolutely, you would be having no clue about it. Is there something on paper? Documented? Nope. Is there something wherein you can gauge for it? Nope. So there are some other potential for errors and irregularities which are huge if I'll talk about in comparison with the manual systems. Next comes in the initiation or execution of transactions. Guys, in a CIS process basically, certain type of transactions are there which are triggered internally by the system. Now you'll be thinking, sir, what are those? There are a few. Okay, with respect to those system updates only. Okay, so you don't get the clue about them, but yes, there are certain type of transactions, that temp files and other things which are triggered internally by the system. So the authorization for such, which may not be documented as in the manual system. In such cases, management, the authorization of these transactions may be implicit. So they usually provide you up. So that's going to be happening in case of these initiation and execution of some of the certain transactions which are not available in manual environment. However, the same exists in your CIS environment. Next will be your dependence. Dependence on other controls over computer processing. So there are some of the certain manual controls procedures that are dependent on computer generated reports. Let's suppose somebody provide me the complete FAR, okay, in printout from the system. Okay, now I'm going to rely on that particular report which has been generated from the system, and my manual work is going to be done on that. Okay, so my control which I'm going to have as a manual process, it's depending on that computer processing. Say yes or no? Absolutely yes. Good. That certain manual control which is going to be dependent that on that output, that printout which I took, okay, that's going to be dependent on the computer generated report and output for their effectiveness. So in a term, I can say that the effectiveness and the consistency of the transaction processing controls are basically dependent on the effectiveness of computer generated information system controls. A key cause over here. What if that report doesn't come out in an appropriate manner? What's going to happen is whatever kind of analysis that I'm going to make it manually, that's going to be disturbed. Why? Because of my dependence on other controls over computer processing. Next comes in as increased management supervision. So the computer information can offer management a variety of analytical tools that can enhance the effectiveness of the entire internal control structure. This is going to increase the management supervision. Why? Because earlier whatever things you used to do manually, now you'll always think about this fact that whether the setup which has been made by us in a CIS environment, whether the same is appropriate and sufficient or not. And if not, definitely you are going to increase your management supervision in order to ensure that your analytical tools are going to enhance the effectiveness of your entire internal control structure. Then there are some of the chances relating to the use of computer assisted audit techniques. So CAT, if I'll talk about. So the auditor may apply general as well as special computer audit techniques and tools in the execution of all these audit tests. Okay. So while we are evaluating the reliability of any be it any of the accounting, be it your internal control systems, you as an auditor, you need to consider a few of the things. Whether the systems ensure, number one, authorized, correct and complete data or not. This is the number one thing that you need to ensure. Number two, whether that data, that system basically, it provides you timely detection and correction of errors or not. What if something is already happening in that computer and you are just not aware of the same, and after a period of 2 years, it gives you a pop-up. Will that be of use to you? Absolutely not. It can be. However, what's the use of it if in case that same thing is detected after a period of 2 years? Were you able to prevent it up? No, absolutely not. So it should ensure that the authorized and correct and a complete data is made available for processing. That is number one. Number two, that it provides for timely detection and correction of errors. Number three, it needs to ensure that the case of interruption in the work of the CIS environment, maybe let's suppose due to power failure, due to mechanical failure, or let's suppose processing failure, the system basically restarts without distorting the completion of entries and records. Have you ever wondered about this thing? Why in the earlier times we used to have, nowadays there are so many laptops, but earlier we used to have desktops along with that UPS. You need to have you ever thought about this thing? Why UPS were there? Simple. We all are aware of the fact that if in case we need to save our data from getting lost, we are working on some file from let's say last 5 hours and we haven't saved that. Okay. Somehow power just went off. Due to that power failure, your work is going to get hampered. So are you having all the checks in place wherein if in case interruption of work happens, so do you have your UPS or not? This is something which is extremely important with respect to audit as well. Are there proper backups or not? Number 4, you need to ensure that the accuracy and completeness of your output, whether these systems basically provide you such accurate and complete data or not. Then they should provide you the adequate kind of data security against fire, against all those other calamities, wrong processing, frauds, all these things. Then they should also prevent unauthorized amendments to the program. Any kind of amendment which is happening in the system, the same should be prevented if in case that's unauthorized. Okay, because that is going to be reflected into entire records. And if something goes in not a right manner, if I'll talk about systems like SAP, they are having multiple units. Okay, and it usually has a setup globally. It's going to affect a lot many things that you can't even imagine of. So you need to ensure that these things are very much important with respect to your CIS environment. So this was all about the risk. Now moving on to risk assessment. So you as an auditor, you need to assess in accordance with SA 315. 315, remember guys, it was about identifying and the assessing of the risk of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment. It basically says, this essay basically says that you should make an assessment of the inherent and the control risk for the material financial statement assertions. Risk may be result of many of the deficiencies. Let's suppose there is some of the problem with respect to the program development and maintenance. It may happen. Then there can be a risk with respect to systems of software support as well. Then there can be a risk into operations. There can be a risk with physical CIS, authority, security. All these things are going to pose up a big risk to you, okay, and your data. So these are the deficiencies which are going to tend to have a very negative impact on all your application systems that are processed through the computer. Risk may also increase the potential for errors and fraudulent activities in specific applications, databases, and processing activities. So as there are some of the new technologies are going on, okay, and they are emerging for their data processing, the clients are adopting the same for building the complex computer systems. And this is going to increase what? This is going to increase the risk which needs further consideration. It's always important. CIS is a very big thing. Why? Because the data privacy and the cyber attacks are daily happening so much. You just turn on your phone, okay, and you just turn on basically this mobile data, and you'll get to know one thing, that once it's been done, you're like popped up so much of your lottery schemes, this cyber attack, hacker, so many things. You just get to know about this thing. Why is this happening into my computer, my laptop, or maybe my mobiles? That's absolutely because of the mobile data. Why? Because once you are accessing the internet, you are blocked, okay, you are prone to all those things. If in case people like you who are just individuals are prone to these things, just imagine the situation of an organization that's working on such a large scale. Don't you think that can be a prey to any of your cyber attacks? Absolutely, they can be. That is why it is very important. And finally, I'll conclude my video with the documentation. So the auditor should document the audit plan. We should document the nature, the timing, the extent of all those audit procedures which are performed, and conclusions which are drawn from those evidences obtained. In an audit of CIS environment, some of the audit evidences may be in electronic form. The auditor should satisfy himself that such evidences are adequately and safely stored and can be retrieved in entirety as and when they are required. So your audit is just not complete if in case you have not completed your documentation. In Big Fours, it said, if not documented, that means not done. So that is something which my manager first told me of once I entered one of the Big Fours. So they told me clearly, if in case you haven't documented some stuff, that means we believe you haven't done that. So that goes with any of your auditing, be it your any of the CIS environment. So you need to keep that in your mind while you go ahead with the same. So I'll be like sharing with you the glance what we are going to do in our next forthcoming video, so that we can plan up accordingly, because that's a huge topic and that's a very important one. So let's move ahead with the next topic, and that will be the review of checks and controls in a CIS environment. So how are you going to ensure your checks and your controls in the CIS environment with respect to these things? So your review process is going to be done in these 8 steps. Number 1, organizational control. Number 2, documentational control. Number 3, access control. Number 4, input control. Then processing control, recording control, storage control, and finally output. So you start your organization, your business, your auditing purpose with the organization. You keep in mind the entire business organization in part. Then something gonna happen in your mind with respect to the documentation stuff. Okay, you need to keep your documentations intact about your previous year working papers, all these things in your mind. Accordingly, you can plan. Then you need to take up the access, okay, access from the concerned personas, and you need to have that access control. Then what's going to happen is you are going to provide them the input, okay, your suggestions, your queries, all these things. Then what's going to happen is your input is going to be processed. Okay, if I'll talk about the companies, basically, companies input is going to be processed. Then it's going to be recorded. Once recording is done, it's been stored accordingly, so that you can retrieve it whenever you want it as output. This is something which I'm just providing you in brief in order to ensure that you guys get a bit of clarity with respect to what's going to happen in the next slides, next presentations. So keep your minds intact with the fun thing that we are going to complete this up, because that's one of the most crucial topics, and I just won't want to let you go without understanding this topic as well. So I'll have this in my next presentation. With this, I conclude my video and I say thank you on behalf of the Edupedia world. Keep interacting via questions, queries, and YouTube comment boxes. I will love to answer each one of your queries and grievances. If in case you have liked our video, if in case you find it useful, do give us a thumbs up. It will act as a motivational booster for us as well. Stay connected. That will help us in understanding your needs way better, guys. Perfect. I'll see you in the next presentation with that particular topic so that I can provide you a glance on it. Till then, keep taking care of yourself. Sayonara. God bless you all. Love you. Bye.